Unfortunately, the end of the road for Inter Miami as they drop a home result to FC Cincinnati and are thus eliminated from MLS Cup playoff contention. But still, a lot to get to on this week's edition of the Inter Miami Show. We're talking about that Cincinnati game, Miami going on tour in China, some contract extensions for a few players at the club, and much, much more. So stay tuned for this week's edition of the Inter Miami Show. Goes for goal, and Calendar with another big save. Messi approaches, he goes for it, and he scores! Lionel Messi on his debut has produced a moment of magic. He'll now get the cross in towards Campana, strong header, and it's a second goal for Campana, and it's a second goal for Inter Miami. Welcome into this week's edition of the Inter Miami Show. Chris Whittingham alongside the former England, Arsenal, West Brom, and Inter Miami defender Kieran Gibbs, live from Drive Pink Stadium. And sad to say, for the final time this year, Kieran. Unfortunately, Miami could not qualify for the playoffs, and so this is the final edition of our preview show.
I know, and you're right. It's a shame. It's been an incredible year. They've fallen short of the playoffs. But we asked them, the week before this, going into the game, that we just wanted them to go for it with no fear. No doubt, and I felt that they did that, particularly in the first half. I thought that, they created a lot of chances. They played some really good stuff. They just couldn't get that final goal in. I mean, they hit the woodwork 3 times in the last 20 minutes, in the first 20 minutes, and so it was difficult to take. Sometimes in football, you need that bit of luck, and it just didn't go their way. But however, I will say, they have given their all to try and make the playoffs. They've given the fans to something to be proud of. I felt like they've really. Tata in particular has reshaped the team and galvanised this squad, and I think that they should be really proud of themselves for a really big effort this season.
Yeah, and what a story it's been, and we'll tell some of it, of course, over the course of this show. But we want to talk about the game against FC Cincinnati. You mentioned giving it a go and throwing caution to the wind to try and get the result here. This is against the team that is going to win the Supporter Shield this year in Major League Soccer. Has already lifted the trophies. To get into the highlights now. And here's one of the many times that Miami hit the woodwork. Tomas Avila smashing the crossbar.
Yeah, I mean, listen, set pieces is such a big part of the game these days, and they do well here. It's just so unfortunate. He gets good connection with the ball. That happens so many times, and it goes in.
Yeah, now into the 12th minute, David Ruiz couldn't quite control, but Cincinnati, in attempting to break, would get the chance here through Brandon Vasquez into Aaron Bupenza, and Drake Calendar, another brilliant save on this season, and he tips it around the post to keep Miami in it at 0-0, as he would a couple times in this game. And then another chance off the woodwork, as they all were in this game for Inter Miami. David Ruiz into Joseph Martinez, and from a fairly impossible angle, somehow manages not only to the inside of the post, but it still stays out.
Yeah, I think he does so well to wrap his foot around it with his left foot on his weaker side on the edge of the box. It's a brilliant effort. It's so unlucky.
Yeah, and hitting the inside of the post, and it stays out. Little 1-2 here. Martinez, fantastic again into Kermaski, and again off the crossbar.
This is just such a wonderful bit of play between the two of them. The give and goes, the quick feet. So unlucky from Kermaski.
And here would be Calendar again producing the goods. Santiago Arias forcing him into the initial save. Bupenza, who was in an onside position, forcing Calendar into another double save. Brilliant stuff from Drake Calendar, but eventually the dam would break. Nico Stefanelli carrying away from the danger. You can see almost the difficulty to find the legs. Busquets dispossessed, and then Bupenza onto it. Yuya Kubo from long distance, forcing the save, and Barreal turning in. Just unlucky on that. I think the performance from Drake Calendar, absolutely spectacular on the day. But in the end, Miami losing by a 0-0, eliminated from MLS Cup playoff contention. But you can really not fault too many things about the performance when you look at the chances that they create in the first half.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, that happens sometimes, and you know, as long as the performance is there, more often than not, you'll get the result. And it's just a shame that over the course of a season, they haven't managed to have that performance level at the beginning, as opposed to what they've produced in the last 3-4 months, which is, you know, probably the biggest thing that you can say has been the difference. It's almost been like 2 different seasons from the team. And so, you know, they'll learn from that now. There's so many learning curves that Tata will have from this squad, and there's a lot to be excited about.
Yeah, if you go back to the first half of the season, if you just create a bit of margin for error for the second half of the season, maybe Miami could have completed that push, or at least given themselves a chance in this final week here to take on Charlotte on Wednesday and on Saturday. I'll look ahead to those games in just a moment, but we are now starting to look ahead towards next season a little bit, and one of the ways in which we're doing so, Kieran, is extensions for a couple of key players. Kamal Miller, who of course Miami traded for during the season from Montreal, signed through 2026 on a new contract extension, and Gregory, a player that we have not seen in the Messi era, as it were, also getting a contract extension for the next couple of seasons. It'll be interesting to see how he'll fit into the current squad.
Yeah, and listen, I think he was one of the biggest misses of the season, and we haven't spoken about how much of a miss he was. I felt that when I saw that he was out for the season, that it was going to be, he was the heart of the team and the spine, and he's been greatly missed. There's no doubt about it. So that's another huge plus that he's extended, because he's a really important part of this team, and I'm really looking forward to actually seeing him line up with Messi and Co and Sergio. And it's just great for rotation and size of squad. You need a big squad. They're in more competitions next season, so that's great news for the club. And Kamal Miller as well, who's had a really impressive first season with the club, shown his experience, really bolstered the back line. I like his leadership. I like that he's left-footed. I like that how he comes out from the back and finds passes through lines. And I think he's also as much as he's got a lot to improve, he's been a really important part of the team this year. And so that's two big pieces of news for the club. Really exciting.
Yeah, we were talking about the first half of the season, maybe with the healthy Gregory and with the healthy John Monta, maybe there's 5 or 6 more points on the board, and now you're in a completely different position to the one you are in now. But Gregory, again, extended through 2025. Kamal Miller through 2026 could be big pieces for the club next season. Want to move on now to the international break, and Kamal Miller is one of those players that is featuring with Canada. So many internationals for this team yet again. Lionel Messi coming off the bench and playing a bit more for Argentina in their game against Paraguay. Joseph Martinez featuring for Venezuela. Robert Taylor for Finland. Sergei Krivtsov playing for Ukraine. Edison Ascona with the Dominican Republic playing in the CONCACAF Nations League. Kamal Miller, as we mentioned, with Canada. And Benjamin Kremaski called into the U.S. Olympic squad. Facundo Farias also featuring in the youth side for Argentina. Was listed in the full call-up squad with Argentina, and Israel Boatwright with the Dominican Republic. Farias probably among the headline makers in that group, called into the full Argentina squad, playing some with the full national team, some with the Olympic team. And it is just so impressive that you have 9 internationals called in and window out.
Oh, yeah, and Farias thoroughly deserved, by the way. I mentioned him a few times in his last few appearances. I thought that he's been the most threatening and exciting player to watch. I love when he's on the team sheet. He's so exciting to watch from the sidelines, and I think he's going to have a big career. So I'm really happy for him. It's thoroughly deserved.
Now, speaking of international, Inter Miami are going on an international tour following the season, of course, unable to participate in the MLS Cup playoffs. So they're heading to China in early November to take on Qingdao Hainu and Chengdu Rongcheng in November. A little bit of an international tour. And Kieran, the remarkable thing is we don't often see MLS teams or American club teams go on tour in much the way you would have traveled all over the world playing for Arsenal, a global brand, and obviously trying to capture fan bases around the world. But now we've seen jerseys all over the world. Inter Miami pink, Messi 10 on the back, and now we're seeing Miami taking advantage of the fact that they are now a global brand and a global club and taking themselves around the world.
Yeah, and why not? They've captured the eyes of the world, and it's great to see. I love that because I've been on tours in Asia, and it's a really special thing. I feel like some of the players they're not going to know what they're in for, because the Asian fans are some of the best in the world. They're so passionate, and it's great exposure for the club, and it's great to get the players out there. And there's no feeling like when you land there, just how special you are to these people and how much they respect you. So I'm really excited for the club to experience that. It'll be another historic day in the club's history. Yeah,
and for Messi, obviously he's going to draw these enormous crowds, and there was going to be that feeling for the rest of the squad. Wait, these people are here to see us. They're here to see me. This is incredible. So it'll be a really cool time for Inter Miami, obviously, to take advantage of the fact that there is some time after the conclusion of the regular season. Now, speaking of Lionel Messi, there is a new series out now on Apple TV Plus, Messi Meets America, documenting the time in which Inter Miami and Lionel Messi have come together to form this incredible season. Obviously, Inter Miami's journey through the Leagues Cup prominently featured, and also, Kieran, you and I featured in the show. We both come out doing our own individual interviews. There's also bits of the show that have made Messi Meets America now available on Apple TV Plus, and it was so cool having watched the first 3 episodes to kind of relive what a bonkers journey that was.
Oh yeah, and so grateful to get a little cameo in it in a Messi documentary. It's brilliant. Really special, really special.
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to watch this series in 20 years' time just to remind myself of what that month was like. Honestly, one of the craziest months I've ever experienced in sport, and obviously Miami getting a trophy in their first month as a club. Now, we talked a lot about Facundo Farias in the show, and among the young talents for Inter Miami featured in the MLS 22 Under-22 list. Now, for those of you unfamiliar, the league's panel of experts get together and put together a list of the 22 best players under the age of 22. There must be 22 at the time the list is released, and Miami having 3 players in this list. Benjamin Cremaschi coming in at number 2, the second best young prospect according to the league's panel of experts. Facundo Farias at number 11, and Diego Gomez at number 20. That's not even including players like David Ruiz, players like Tomas Aviles that are coming through as young talents. And when you look at the background of the 3 players mentioned, Cremaschi at 2, Farias at 11, Gomez at 20, it is remarkable that there is a young academy player that has come through and impressed enough to feature at the number 2 spot, and then some South American young signings, in some ways the model for Major League Soccer, having young players from various backgrounds to fill out squads and provide the promise and, in some ways, the sell-on value in some of these teams. So cool for a kid like Cremaschi, who came through the club's academy, to be thought of as one of the best products in Major League Soccer.
For sure. And listen, there's been a lot of amazing stories from the club this season. But for me, that's up there in at least the top 3. You know, there's been a real, there's been a birthing of young talents that have come through the academy. They've burst onto the scene, and they've all had brilliant breakthrough seasons. I mean, how much experience must they have gained just in one season? It's incredible. And so, yeah, you hope that they're going to have long, healthy careers. What a start they've had. And we hope for many, many more. But yeah, I mean, David Ruiz, Cremaschi, Noah Allen, the list goes on, and it's just such a cool story, for an inspiring story for the city of Miami in particular, but also the US as well. So, you know, long may it continue.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned Noah Allen, because another young player who's kind of had a breakthrough moment in this season. So many young talents coming through this club, and we imagine we'll see them blossom in the years to come. Just one last item of business before we go, and that is the games that are coming up for Inter Miami this week. Home against Charlotte on Wednesday, away against Charlotte on Saturday. The Wednesday game is, of course, a makeup from the Leagues Cup final. It was meant to be Inter Miami against Charlotte on August the 20th. Instead, it was Miami against Nashville on the day that Inter Miami won a trophy. So this is a makeup game. And of course, as we mentioned earlier, Inter Miami no longer in a playoff contention. But Kieran, this is the time of the season in which players do have to earn a little bit more towards their spots for next year, and you start to think ahead a little bit. What is the mentality approaching a game like games like this for the Inter Miami players?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it that these games are tough mentally, because there's not much to play for, you know, in terms of, you know, hoping for a playoff spot or getting your hands on a trophy. And so sometimes that motivation can be lacking. I've played in those games where, you know, you finish just second in the league and you can't win the league, and there's not really much to play for. So, you know, they have to look forward to next season and know that the competition for places now, especially at this club, is, you know, really, really high. So, you know, they have to use that as their motivation, and show to the manager that, you know, how hungry they are to continue and play next season. And that's the biggest thing that they have to do, and you know, really impress the manager and the fans, and show that they want to be the main man next season.
Yeah, and obviously 2 games to come this week for Inter Miami on Wednesday and on Saturday. But that'll do it for us for this week's edition and the final preview edition of the Inter Miami Show. I want to thank everyone behind the scenes who makes this show happen each and every week. An absolutely brilliant team we have here at the Inter Miami Show. I want to thank you, Kieran, your first year as a pundit, you've
Thank
done
you
a
very
brilliant
much, man.
job from show 1 to show, what is this, 33, 34?
Yeah.
It's been a remarkable journey to be along for this with you. And, yeah, that'll do it for us. We hope you enjoy the final 2 games of the Inter Miami season. Of course, Inter Miami will then travel to China after that. But what a season it has been. Miami capturing a trophy. You know, doing that little thing of bringing Lionel Messi, the greatest of all time, into the club. What a year it was. We hope you enjoyed it with us here on the Inter Miami Show.